Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Last time we stopped at Buhaira, the monk. We mentioned that the monk told Abu Talib, the Prophet's uncle, to take the Prophet ﷺ quickly and return him to Mecca. Abu Talib couldn't leave the caravan, so he asked someone from the caravan to take the Prophet ﷺ back to Mecca, while he continued with the caravan to Bilad al-Sham, the Levant. In Mecca, the Prophet ﷺ became famous for being the honest and the trustworthy, because he was always honest in his dealings with people, truthful in everything he said or did. He had never told a lie in his life. Can you imagine? What an amazing character he had. Everyone in Mecca knew him for this title. Among those who heard about the Prophet's honesty and truthfulness was Lady Khadijah. May Allah be pleased with her. Lady Khadijah was from a noble family in Mecca and one of its wealthiest women. She wasn't only extremely successful in her flourishing business, but also admired for her stunning beauty. Many prominent men from Mecca tried to propose to her, but she wasn't interested in marrying any of them. She had a condition for anyone working with her in business. They had to be trustworthy. When she heard about the Prophet's honesty, she decided to hire him for her trade. The Prophet ﷺ accepted, and he took charge of trading on her behalf. Lady Khadijah sent her servant, Seerah, to accompany the Prophet ﷺ on his journey to Bilad al-Sham. Seerah noticed how the Prophet ﷺ treated him well, despite being a servant, something very unusual for people in Mecca. Throughout the journey, the Prophet ﷺ treated him with kindness and never made him feel like a servant, reflecting one of the Prophet's noble qualities, treating everyone equally without arrogance. Seerah grew very fond of the Prophet ﷺ and greatly admired his noble character. As they traveled, Seerah and the Prophet ﷺ were not affected by the sun, because a cloud always shaded them, protecting them from the heat. Before the Prophet ﷺ and Seerah reached a monastery, the Prophet ﷺ sat under a tree, while Seerah waited nearby. At that moment, a monk appeared. But he wasn't Buhaira, as Buhaira was no longer there. This monk noticed the cloud and became curious. He approached Seerah and started asking him questions about the Prophet ﷺ. Seerah answered, then asked him, "Why are you asking me these questions?" The monk replied, "The tree that Muhammad sat under is a special one. Only prophets sit under it." The Prophet ﷺ and Seerah reached Bilad al-Sham and sold the goods they brought from Mecca. However, the Prophet ﷺ didn't stop there. He put more goods from Bilad al-Sham and brought them back to Mecca to sell. He made the profit twice, once in Bilad al-Sham and again in Mecca. He then returned all the money to Lady Khadijah. She was amazed at how much the Prophet ﷺ had earned and found that he had made the highest profit compared to anyone else who worked with her. Lady Khadijah became very curious about the Prophet's character and asked Seerah about him. Seerah told her everything about the cloud, the monk, the tree, the journey, and how the Prophet ﷺ had treated him with such respect. Lady Khadijah was impressed by how noble and trustworthy the Prophet ﷺ was. At that time, the Prophet ﷺ was 25 years old, and Lady Khadijah was 40. She admired his character so much that she wanted someone like him to be her husband. She thought to herself about how to present this proposal to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Do you want to know what Lady Khadijah did next? Stay tuned for the next episode of Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
صلوا عليه أفضل صلاة، صلوا يزيد الشوق صلة لحبيبي غيرك السلام، والمولى بيزيد الصلاة. صلوا عليه أفضل صلاة، صلوا يزيد الشوق صلة لحبيبي غيرك السلام، والمولى بيزيد